This podcast is a proud member of PodNation Media Network.
Flicker of reels, the shadows crawl. Curtains rise, a ghostly sprawl. The frames are whispers, the stories call. The tractors hum in a hollow tune. Moonlight cuts through velvet gloom. Is it a dream or a real too soon? Step into the screen where the dark turns keen. Journey with the Cinephile, unseen, unseen. The tales twist and turn as the silent light burns. A world unknown where the shadows yearn.
Hello and welcome, listeners, to Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of horror cinema, from the eerie classics to the latest spine-chilling releases. Join me as I explore the history, themes, and artistry of horror one film at a time. Whether you're a seasoned horror fan or just stepping into the shadows, this journey is for you. So dim the lights, embrace the fear, and let's talk horror. And let's do that on episode 318. This is your tour guide here of David Garrett Jr., recording out of Columbus, Ohio. And for this episode here is going to be my winter year-end number 27. So the two feature reviews I have on here is going to be one that's a winter-themed film in Liverleaf. This is actually from Japan. And then I'll be pairing this up with Match. Doesn't make the greatest double feature, but we do have kind of people harboring kind of psychopathic tendencies, and not necessarily people you would expect to be. And so it kind of makes for an interesting little through line there. So then for mini reviews here, I have Howling, New Moon Rising. That's my Voyage of the Fives rewatch from 1995. Then I have a screener of The Daughters of the Domino. And then I got to finally check out Dangerous Animals. That's a 2025 release. And then I gave a rewatch to Strange Harvest from 2025. I have a short on here of the Turing test, and then the last two episodes that are available right now for Stranger Things. And then something else pretty cool here is I got reached out to by somebody who is one of the higher ups for Cinephile, which is a new streaming service. Sounds like it's only going to be a couple bucks a month for that one. And they gave me a link where you can, I believe, either get a discount or it's an easy kind of way to sign up for everything. So I have that link in the show notes. I'll keep that down in there, going forward and everything like that. So I don't think there's anything I need to do here for this intro part of it. So let me get you over then to do my
monthly review.
And let's do my monthly review for November 2025. So I watched 36 total films. 30 of those were horror films. 11 of those are 2025. I actually think 10 of those are actually 2025 releases. And my percentage of horror was 83.33%. So the horror movies I watched would be Do You Like Hitchcock? Enigma, Dracula in the Provinces, Bloody Pit of Horror, The Blade Cuts Deep, Voice of Shadows, The Trouble with Tessa, Final Destination Bloodlines, Planet of the Vampires, Predator Badlands, The House of Exorcism, Cut and Run, Lilith, Don't Trip, Frankenstein, this is the one for 2025, Bring Her Back, Shock, The Forbidden Room, Last Stop on the Night Train, aka Late Night Trains, aka Night Train Murders, Rufus, Together, Keeper, Winter Beast, Blood and Donuts, Manor of Darkness, Lonely Legend, The House in Between Part 2, that's a documentary, The Long Walk, Nightmare Before Christmas, and Liverleaf. So 10 countries were represented. I had United States, Italy, Spain, Yugoslavia, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Germany/West Germany, Mexico, France, and Japan. So in the 2025 watches, those were The Blade Cuts Deeper, The Trouble with Tessa, Predator Badlands, Lilith, a J. Crimson film, Don't Trip, Frankenstein, Rufus, Keeper, Manor of Darkness, and Lonely Legend. So the oldest watched was going to be Bloody Pit of Horror from 1965. Average year is 2004. So how this kind of stacks up, let me do some, let's start with that there, is that 2004 is my newest year that I've ever done for the average. The oldest I've ever done would have been last year at 1993, and then the newest would have been a tie between 2019, 2021, 2022, and 2023 was 2001, and I'm 1999 across the board. And I'll also go ahead and say that the 10 new horror films is the most I've ever done by a margin of 2, and the lowest I've ever done would have been 2018 at 3. I've watched 54 movies that were released in that specific year. for horror. And then for horror films themselves, 30 is going to be kind of on the upper end here. Last year was 35. This is your 30 is right below that. And then the lowest number I would have done would have been back in 2018 where I did 17. I've watched 209 horror films in the months of November. And then total films at 36 is going to be on the upper end, not the highest I've ever done, which would have been 2021. I did 38. Last year I did 37, so 36 is right behind that. And then the lowest number I would have ever have done would be 2022 where I did 31. I've watched 274 movies in the months of November. So then the highest rated is going to be The Nightmare Before Christmas at a 9.5. I've actually finally bumped that up a half point rating for all the times that I've watched it. Lowest rated is going to be Voice of Shadows at a 5, and the average rating is going to be a 6.9. Nice. So this one is my second lowest. Last year I was a 6.7. The highest I've ever done would have been 2018 at a 7.8. I'm at a 7.4 as the average across the board. Then percentage of horror, I'm at 83.33%. That is actually going to be kind of on the upper end here. The lowest would have been 2018 at 53.13%. Last year was the highest at 94.59%. I'm at 75.94% across the months of November. So then for yearly totals here, so really kind of just coming down to it here is that for 2025 watches, if I wanted to have 100, I should be at 91.3. I'm at 119, so I just crushed that record. And then for horror films, I should be at 334.4 to get to 365. I'm at 361 already, so once again, crushed that number. I'm going to have that. The goal that I'm going to fall short on is getting 500 movies. I should be at 458.7. I'm at 434 right now. I'll see where I kind of end up there, but because let's see here, I've been usually ticking upwards. I believe, having my son and everything like that. Like I've beat some previous years already. Like the ones I'm falling short on are 2019 where I did 518, and then I'm also probably gonna fall short, like I said, of the last year for 480. Let's kind of see where I'm at because I've already, like I said, beat 2020 right at 432, and then I'm really close to 2021, and let's see how 2022 how close I can get there because that one is 447 and 452 respectively. And then for the average year right now, 2000 is slightly higher than what I have been doing. At 1999 is the average across all the boards. The earliest year would have been 2023, was at 1996, and I'm usually hovering about 1998, 1999, 2000, so kind of hovering right around there. So for average ratings, this year is a 7.0. That is actually the lowest I've ever done. The highest was 2019 at 7.6. I've been trending lower here as the last couple of years at 7.2 and 7.1 respectively, but I'm a 7.3 across the board. Percentage of horror right now, I am bringing that average up. I'm at 83.07 for the year. The average right now is 80.47, and kind of hovering where I've been about 80% of the time is that, and then 2018 was the lowest at 72.09%. And then before I jump into my yearly stuff, let me do a little bit more of the stats from Letterboxd. That I watched 36 films. That totals for 56.1 hours. 42 directors were covered, 9 countries, and 3 languages. 2025 had the highest overlap. I did 12 films that were released that year. 1975 had 3 films, so that's kind of cool there. Thriller was my next highest for the genres, and then Italy was the second most seen country, which doesn't shock me. I had 10 films there. And then Italian was the most common language outside of that. The highest theme was going to be horror, the undead monster classic at 7 films. The top nano genre is going to be powerful, unsettling fear at 4 films. And then the cast people that were kind of overlapping here, I watched 3 films featuring John Steiner, 2 featuring Johnny Depp, 2 with Ivan Razumov, and 2 featuring Jeannie Coulter. I think everybody say her name? Coulter. And then the directors here, I watched 3 Mario Bava films, 2 Lucio Fulci films, and then highest average is going to be The Night Before Christmas at a 4.0. Lowest average is going to be Mordecai at a 2.2. Most popular is going to be Frankenstein at a 3.9. Most obscure is Lonely Legend. The newest is going to be The Blood Cuts Deeper from November 18th. And then the oldest is going to be Dumbo from 1941. And then the longest is Frankenstein. The shortest is the Michigan versus Ohio State, the rivalry documentary. And then for the year, though, for my most seen actors, Johnny Depp still running away with it at 22 films. Then Bela Lugosi behind him at 9. Boris Karloff is tied with Helena Bonham Carter and Christopher Lee at 6 films, so they're all third. Then tied for 6 is going to be Jeffrey Rush and Paul Whitehouse for 4 films, and then coming in tied at 8 are going to be John Carradine, Lynn Acton McPherson, Libby Higgins, Justina Armstead, Madison Pullins, Timothy Spall, Haley Steinfeld, Philip Fillmar, Bill Nighy, Alfred Molina, Valerie Hobson, Tony Todd, Jason Brooks, Robert Englund, Lily Taylor, Stephen Root, Giovanni Ribisi, Sarah Nicklin, John Steiner, and Monica Evans all tied with 3 films. And then for most scene director, Seth Breedlove is at 9. And then Tim Burton is in second with 5. Then we have for 4 films, Jeff Herberger, Gore Verbinski, and Mario Bava tied for 3rd. Tied for 6 is going to be William Butler and Dario Argento at 3 films. And then tied for 8th with 2 is going to be Thomas Edward Seymour, Zach Limpopinski, Frank Henenlotter, J.R. Bookwalter, Flying Lotus, Stuart Walker, Kiyoshi Kurosawa, Wes Craven, Stephen Cognetti, Scott Derrickson, Don Siegel, Steve Gonsalves, Kendall Welpton, Osgood Perkins, and Lucio Fulci. So that's all of here then for this monthly review as well for this intro. So let me go ahead and say thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy coming this journey with me.
What's up, VHS heads? I'm Matt. Join me and my 2 broskies, Chris and Dave, on our movie comparison podcast, The VHS Abyss, putting 2 movies from the golden age of cinema against each other. Whether it's a teenage soldier head-to-head, like Red Dawn versus Toy Soldiers, or simply picking 2 from a back catalogue of icons of the VHS era, like Roddy Piper or Jamie Lee Curtis. Whatever link we can find between 2 films, we've got you covered. With facts, gaffes, and plenty of laughs along the way, join us on all podcast platforms to discover who will be crowned champion of the episode. We are the VHS Abyss. Whether it's a hit or a miss, we love to reminisce.
Are you tired of the coffee crash? Still jittery an hour after your morning cup of coffee? Listen, I used to drink 5, 6, 7 cups a day to just keep going. The anxiety, the stomach pains, the afternoon crash, it was brutal. Then I discovered Rise Coffee, and everything changed. Rise has less than half the caffeine as regular coffee, but here's the magic. It contains 6 organic mushrooms, including cordyceps, lion's mane, and others that naturally sustain your energy without the jitters or crash. We're talking sharper focus, immune support, better gut health, and calm, sustained energy that lasts all day. Plus, it's organic, vegan, and has 0 added sugars. Unlike other mushroom coffees, Rise is USA grown in California. A full spectrum of mushrooms per serving that actually works. Here at Pod Nation, we only partner with brands we actually believe in. And Rise Coffee is the real deal. Head to risesuperfoods.com and use promo code PODNA15 for 15% off your order. That's PODNA 15 for 15% off. Ditch the crash, fuel your day the right way with Rise Coffee.
And for my first mini review here is going to be The Howling, New Moon Rising. I think it's actually just Howling, New Moon Rising, regardless. This is from 1995. It was written and directed by Clive Turner, and they're also giving credit here to Gary Bradner. And there's also another director here who was uncredited of Roger Knoll. This is starring John Ramsden, Ernest Kester, and Turner. This is a werewolf horror film that is from the United Kingdom. It is currently sitting on a 1.8 on IMDb and a 1.6 on Letterboxd, where the synopsis being: a small-town desert community in Southern California begins experiencing a number of brutal slayings, and it looks to be done by an animal. In a nearby town, a priest is convinced it's the work of a werewolf and enlists the aid of a local detective. So this one I had actually saw out a good time ago. Also living in Cleveland. I know that there was different films in the franchise, so I was working my way through. Growing up, I had seen part 2. I believe seen part 4. I think it was at my regular video store, so I checked it out. And it was a while before I actually saw the original. It might have been after college. So this is one that when I was living in Cleveland, like I said, I saw it, knew it wasn't very good, but giving it a rewatch here as a voyage to the 5 just to kind of see where I sat with it. And I'm going to go ahead and start once again saying this is not very good. I try to find the positives in the thing that I watch. What I will credit here is that they did get a movie made. I like the setting by putting this in the desert. It becomes a murder mystery from there. The problem is that Ted doesn't know he's a suspect. So he's portrayed by Turner. And he is the new guy who comes into town. We actually see him riding on his motorcycle, and that is Ted Smith, portrayed by Turner. So we're following a duo of women who are trying to prove that he's the killer, but it doesn't do enough to fully build suspense or tension there, unfortunately. And that's part of it going to that he doesn't even know, so he can't try to prove them wrong. Something else I'll give credit here for the fact is that this seems like it's more of a direct sequel to the parts 4 through 6 to an extent. There are references to those films that we'll gotta get with flashbacks. So in this one we have Father John, who is portrayed by John Huff, and he's trying to convince this detective, who's portrayed by Ramsden, that what is happening. It does become sort of a clip show for the amount of old footage it's used. I've seen other movies do it way worse, but I'd say that there's a good third of this that's just reusing stuff. A bit is a good way to kind of get the viewer up to speed without going dialogue heavy. This just is too much. There's also too many montages. It feels like the script and the footage shot wasn't enough to make a feature film. Then they added in the filler of people line dancing to the musical acts and then them playing at a bar and everything. A scene or a sequence would be fine, especially early. The fact that they use so much of it does bog this down, and it made it difficult for me to focus. There are other themes that you could pull from this as well, though. My issue with the dancing scenes can be seen as celebrating the small town culture. I do get that to an extent. There's also this added element to the werewolf lore that someone cursed after all these years can inflict it on others. They also play with the idea that this could be seen as possession, that it can take over other people and kind of like body shift a little bit. So now that out of the way, let's then shift over to the filmmaking aspects. Cinematography and framing, they're adequate. There's a red filter when we're seeing through the monster's eyes as people are being attacked. The effects are limited. The werewolf appears to be like a rubber mask, and the transformation scene, while basic, does show at least some effort. The music, though not my preferred genre, appropriately complements the depicted culture. All it's left to be actual performances. Turner is an acceptable enough lead, despite his odd accent for the country setting, and his personality makes his appearance by the town plausible. Ramsden and Huff work as that duo, with the latter trying to convince the detective about werewolves. And we also have a lot of other people here, like Ernest Kester is portraying Ernie. They're pretty much everybody's playing their first names to an extent. We have Cheryl Allen portraying Cheryl. We have Sally Harcum playing somebody who's not her first name of Evan. And then we also have here Jacqueline Armitage is playing Jacqueline. And the rest of the cast, I also give credit here, I like to Elizabeth Shee portraying Mary Lou. The amateur feel is acceptable, with the poor comedy that everybody's trying to do here is worsened just because the actor's delivery just isn't great. So in conclusion, this is a low-budget entry into a franchise that struggles to justify its existence, primarily due to the over-reliance on stock footage with earlier sequels and excessive filler in the form of dance montages. While it manages to create a unique desert set murder mystery and connect the lore from parts 4 through 6, the weak suspense, limited practical effects, and the amateur comedy detract significantly from the viewing experience. Despite the adequate efforts of the cast and the successful production of a feature film, its narrative deficiencies ultimately make this one of a weaker installments, earning it a very low rating for me. I've actually come up a bit from the last time I've seen this one, but I am still very low here as a 2.5 out of 10. Can't really recommend this one to you. Then up next is a screener I got to check out of The Daughters of the Domino from 2025. This is directed by Jesse McAnally, who also wrote this with Nathan P. Keelan. This stars Miranda Moffat, Lucy Gillespie, and Ashley Powlin. So this is a mystery film, so this isn't horror, but I mean, it has some darker elements, and I'll kind of get into that a little bit here, but this is from the United States. It doesn't have enough ratings yet on IMDb for an average, and kind of the same thing over on Letterboxd. There's a lot of people giving it a 5-star movie, and there's a lot of people also giving it like 3.5 to a 4-star over there. So the synopsis is a modern noir about a mother who must reunite with her estranged detective sister to find her missing teenage daughter. So this one, I learned about it when the co-writer and director here of McAnally reached out to me via social media. I did look into it, and seeing this wasn't horror did make me pause. It has darker elements, like I said. I'll get into that again. Other than that, I did try to come into this one as blind as possible. Let me go ahead and introduce some of the characters here. So we have Detective Nina Rose, who's played by Moffat. Her sister that she's estranged from is Laura Sutcliffe, portrayed by Gillespie. And then the daughter who goes missing is Jules, portrayed by Powlin. Laura's her mom. So what we're getting here, though, is it's an interesting neo-noir. I love this idea of like the serial killer that has a gimmick. They call him Domino because he will inflict these wounds that are torture-like on the leg where it looks like a domino. And then the killer actually has that tattoo on their forearm. And we'll kind of see things going from there. What I will say for the stories that we're following here, it turns more of like a revenge fact. I won't reveal anything from there, but we do have a serial killer here. It could be a copycat, could be the real guy. We do see in the very beginning that it's thought that the father is deceased, and we have Nina who goes there to see him, and then she kind of realizes, she starts to wonder if that's the truth or not. So what we have here is we have this dynamic of the family. We have these sisters that are estranged after everything that came out about their father and who he was. This is the point of contention since Laura dislikes that her sister used this to further her career, and even has a new book coming out. Nina points out that her sister allowed her father to do certain things that she now scolds Nina for. It's like smoking in the house and whatnot for there, as it sounds like Laura never really kind of spoke up. Now, who her aunt is seems like why Jules is so into true crime like she is, especially since the case involved her grandfather. I did find this a good touch for the story development. Then shifting from here, we have this basic setup. Several films, feature like a child reaching out to adulthood, seeking freedom and making choices that lead to terrifying outcomes. A theme relatable to me as a parent. I also recall uncomfortable youthful experiences of going where I probably shouldn't have, and not to this extreme obviously, but this successfully portrays the concepts of Laura being, rightly concerned and not overbearing, which prevents teens from acting entirely in secret. And another thing here that I also want to bring up that I actually did not write down in my review originally is that we also have this kind of weird thing where there is a cult of people who have like readings about poems and stuff, and they're paying homage to this serial killer. Kind of a very creepy thing there, and this does seem to be like a commentary on how we glorify people who have done bad things like this. So that should be enough for the story. Let's shift over to the acting performances. It's good across the board here. Moffat is solid as Nina. I love her quirky personality and how she is like a Sherlock Holmes almost with an eye for evidence. Gillespie is interesting as her counterpart. She's nervous by nature, but her character art is great in the events as they unfold. I like Pauline, who is more like her aunt, but being stifled by her mother who cares about her. Then we also here have Tony Semenick, who plays a character by the name of Michael Arlen Rose, and he's kind of an interesting one, and what he does, he has some good size for his role as well. And then we also have, and the screen presence I should also give credit for. I also want to give credit here to Asia Hicks, who plays Frankie Gonzalez. This is the best friend to Jules. The rest of the cast rounds us out for what was needed. All it's nothing to be filmmaking aspects. Cinematography and framing are good. One of the best parts there is the staging of these crime scene that we saw earlier on. I'll also pull in the effects by saying that they're limited, but it's more about the mystery and building suspense. What we did get looked good. It did show more than I was expecting, especially for a film working with a budget like it does. Other than that, I thought that the sound design worked and building the atmosphere needed as well. So in conclusion, this is a compelling neo-noir mystery and successfully builds suspense through a strong premise and intriguing family dynamics. McAnally and Keelan craft a story of revenge centered on the estranged relationship between sisters Nina and Laura, forced to reunite when the legacy of their serial killer father resurfaces. The solid performances, particularly from Moffat and Gillespie, anchor the narrative, while the technical elements, including good cinematography and sound design, effectively establish a dark atmosphere despite a presumably modest budget. Though it leans more into the mystery than outright horror, the film's dark themes with the sharp character work make it a worthwhile and engaging watch. So my rating here then for The Daughters of the Domino, I'm going to give this one a 7 out of 10. And keep an eye out here as this, I hope, will hit VOD here in the nearish future. Then up next, I finally got to check out Dangerous Animals here from 2025, directed by Sean Byrne and written by Nick Leppard. This is starring Hasse Harrison, Jai Courtney, and Josh Houston. This is a psychological horror thriller film that I would also kind of put into eco-horror, and this is from, I believe, this is a co-production between Australia, United States, and Canada. It is currently sitting on a 6.4 on IMDb and a 3.0 on Letterboxd, where it snaps being. A savvy and free-spirited surfer abducted by a shark-obsessed serial killer, held captive on his boat, she must figure out how to escape before he carries out a ritualistic feeding to the shark below. Go ahead and say that free spirit is Zephyr, portrayed by Harrison, and then Bruce Tucker is portrayed by Jai Courtney. He is the guy who has the boat. So I missed this one in the theaters, I believe due to the birth of my second child. Things were hectic at home, so I wasn't able to, leave and go catch it, but I knew I wanted to see this before doing my end-of-year list. Knowing this was coming to Shudder helped, and it was seen in December as part of my roundup there. So where I'm going to go ahead and start is that I'm a big fan of our director here of Byrne. I liked his previous works, and this one doesn't seem to be something that is necessarily a passion project, or at least from the limited information, it seems more like a director for hire. Regardless, he did well here, and I enjoyed, for the most part, what we got. Now let's start by looking at our lead character. We're introduced to Zephyr. It's interesting. She's closed off at first and just wanting to be left alone. I like that we get subtle reveals for her, whether it's hooking up with Moses, who is portrayed by Houston's, that is Moses Markley, and wanting to open up to him via text message because she did like him, and learning, about her upbringing, and there's little things that make sense for her character. It explains why she's a fighter and the grief that she gives to Tucker as she kind of fights back. I will say, I don't know if Harrison's performance is great. She feels wooden at times, but still works for the most part for what we needed. Let's then shift over to talk about our villain here of Tucker. Courtney brings great size to the role, which makes him terrifying. He's quirky as well. What is kind of also, he's a little bit lovable and scary when he snaps, so he's adding some depth here. There's an interesting backstory that we get where he was a boy who was attacked by a great white, I believe. He survived and it changed him. His charm makes him easy to lure people in. I also like that he incorporates serial killer aspects where he keeps trophies. Courtney has a solid performance that brings Tucker to life. Now, let's go over to the title here. It feels like it's a little bit of a double entendre with Dangerous Animals. It's alluding to the fact that sharks themselves are dangerous. I do like that Tucker is an apologist for them, pointing out that they tend to only attack humans out of confusion. We don't necessarily taste great to them, hence why they normally move on. The other meaning is that Tucker and Zephyr are dangerous animals in different ways. He's a maniacal serial killer. Her drive to survive makes her a formidable and potent. I did appreciate the incorporation of all that. Other themes I've noticed here, we have toxic masculinity. It's interesting that Tucker corrects Greg in this opening sequence and that he is portrayed by Liam Granke. when he shows up with a young lady named Heather, portrayed by Ella Newton, where he starts speaking for her, and Tucker kind of corrects him on it. Now, the irony is that he's doing this to people, and he's pretty toxic there. This coupled with Moses, who is genuinely a nice guy and trying to make a connection with Zephyr despite her resistance. Back over to Tucker, what he does to his victims is dehumanizing. He makes a comment about how he prefers horror films over romance, which makes sense for his ritual. The last would be isolation and vulnerability. These go together for Tucker with the taking of victims. Let's then go over to the acting performances. I've already said that I didn't love Harrison's performance as Zephyr. She does fit the role well enough, though. She's attractive, so that helps. Courtney is great as our villain. He's allowed to show more personality, so that helps. Houston's works as his guy who is trying to break through Zephyr's shell. I like how he factors into things as well. I also want to give credit here to a guy who has a boat next to Bruce, and that would be Rob Carlton playing Dave. I thought Newton and Grenke were good in their roles. The rest of the cast around the software was needed. All that's left then to be filmmaking. I do think that the cinematography and framing were good. I do love capturing how beautiful yet terrifying Australia is. The shots underwater are good. I like the claustrophobic feel of the boat, both its location and just how difficult it is to get off. Big fan of horror set on a boat. Now, the effects that we get are good. They're tamer than I'd expect from a Byrne film. The blood looked good, though. Other than that, I thought the soundtrack fit for what was needed with building the atmosphere. We get a great scene with Tucker cutting loose, which adds levity. In conclusion, this is a compelling thriller that delivers on its premise, anchored by a terrifying performance from Courtney as a shark-obsessed serial killer, Tucker. While Harrison's performance of Zephyr falls a little bit flat, her character's determination proves to be a strong foil to the villain. Director Byrne effectively uses the Australian setting to create both beauty and dread, incorporating solid filmmaking and thematic depth, especially concerning the double entendre of the film's title and the exploration of toxic masculinity. Despite some minor flaws in the lead performance, this is an enjoyable one. It's tense watch that successfully blends survival horror with the serial killer subgenre, making it a worthy addition to your late year viewing list if you haven't seen this one yet, or just give it a watch because it's a fun movie. So my rating here for Dangerous Animals, I gave this one a 7 out of 10. And I'll brief with my next one here because this is a rewatch here of Strange Harvest. This is technically from 2024, got its wide release here this year. Written and directed by Stuart Ortiz. It stars Peter Sizzo, Terry Apple, and Andy Lauer. This is a folk found footage supernatural documentary horror film that is from the United States, currently sitting on a 6.4 on IMDb and a 3.1 on Letterboxd for a synopsis. Detectives are thrust into a chilling hunt for Mr. Shiny, a sadistic serial killer from the past whose return marks the beginning of a new wave of grotesque, otherworldly crimes tied to a dark cosmic force. So this one here, if you'd like to hear featured review, is going to be episode 303, which was Voyages to Fives number 18 that featured Scrooge, and this is the two features over there. Not the greatest double feature, but here we are. So I'm going to go ahead and do is say that this is a compelling and unsettling mockumentary that blends true crime aesthetics with cosmic horror, and I'll say I'm definitely glad that I gave this one a rewatch. So what we're getting here is we have this serial killer, Mr. Shiny. He's from the past. After a 15-year hiatus, he is back to killing in the San Bernardino Inland Empire area. So he has some grotesque, otherworldly crimes that seem to be tied to dark cosmic forces, or at least he believes they are. They're definitely ritualistic. The killer's mask is simple yet terrifying and fits a strange symbol, which is like a triangle, some lines and dots, that is left behind at the crime scenes. And I think that Jesse J. Clarkson does a great job in that role. Very limited. We're kind of just seeing him in this mask, but I think when we do get to see things, it is creepy. So it takes place in San Bernardino, like I said, the Inland Empire area. It follows two detectives, Joe Kirby, portrayed by Sizzo, and Lexi, portrayed by Apple. They are assigned to the case in the mid-90s. The crimes resumed in the 2010s, becoming more calculated, intricate, and harrowing. Now, the police struggle to find evidence, which highlights how meticulous Mr. Shiny is at eluding capture, and how being a detective can be very hard. So I think that the film's immersive quality is enhanced by true crime documentary filmmaking, reminiscent of things you get with like Forensic Files and Unsolved Mysteries. The mockumentary and found footage techniques use interviews with detectives, also like family and friends of the people that were killed, as well as experts. And there's some police body cam footage late, and we have like interview room footage of people that are suspects and home videos. I also think that the ritualistic killings and the desperation felt by the detectives struggling to find evidence is a good touch. I also think that the realistic portrayal of detective work where the police are truly lost without a smoking gun, which you kind of always see in those detective shows, how it seems to be so easy to do some of this stuff, and it's not. The most terrifying element is, according that I thought, was handling of the potential cosmic horror, where the killer believes something more important to their actions than the lives being taken. The story seems to draw inspiration from real-life killers as well, like Zodiac, Night Stalker, and Richard Speck. So the cast for me was unrecognizable, so that's a good thing. The performances by Sizzo and Apple as lead detectives are authentic feeling, mirroring true crime. Practical effects for the aftermath of the kills are excellent, with some acceptable CGI later on. I'm not always the biggest fan there, but I think it does well. So for me, I rather enjoyed what we got here. Glad that I gave this one a rewatch. I do think it's a little bit more unsettling the second time around, so that's also, a definite perk there. I end up giving this one an 8 out of 10 this time after the second watch. And then now I have for you a short film we got to see as a screener of the Turing Test. This is a sci-fi short. This is from 2025, written and directed by Jessica Mark Tanner. This is starring Marlene Foster, Richard Lingstedt, and Ozan Feden. This is from Germany, and it's actually not able to be rated yet on IMDb, and then there isn't a letterbox page at this time, but the synopsis: preparing your own AI for an upcoming Turing test is hard enough, even harder when it doesn't behave the way you planned. But for young Sophie, portrayed by Fonster, everything depends on passing the test with Alan, portrayed by Ling Schneit. So this is a short film I got a chance to see, like I was saying, when Mark Tanner reached out with a screener link. When I looked this up, I saw it wasn't horror, but I do enjoy sci-fi, and this being a short, I decided to go ahead and give it a review. It's 6 minutes long. So this one, I think the synopsis does well. A majority of what we get here is Alan and Sophie chatting. I'll be honest, I forgot what the Turing test was until hearing their back and forth. Interestingly enough, earlier in this year, my wife and I rewatched Transcendence, where that test is mentioned there. I helped it click. I did look this up. I guess it's from 1950s era thought machine, or a thought experiment to gauge a machine's ability to exhibit human-like intelligence to determine which is the machine. Now that it's set up, I do love the back and forth between the two. Sophie seems stressed in making sure that Alan stays on track to ensure they pass. The major goal is to mask enough for it to seem human. That does seem to be the major goals for AI. The conversations back and forth were great. It was even better, there's a little stinger at the end with the reveal of the truth. What I'll include here, as well as when I rate short films, they either need to have a complete story or do I want to know more. For this one, I think we effectively conveys everything that it needs. It's set up, it hooks the viewer, and then where it goes for the reveal is well done. So this is truly carrying by the acting performance as well. Fonsner and Ling Schneit, if I'm mispronouncing your names, I do apologize. They just kind of talk. This plays through their perceptions, which I'm a fan of. There's a moment where Sophie seems to be getting through, and then Alan will say something to derail everything. It's even better is that the dialogue by the end of this, it makes you question what's being tested, and it isn't necessarily what you think from the beginning, and that made me smile. Oh, and let's shift over to discuss the filmmaking aspects. For the most part, this is inside of a virtual reality world. It is white, almost like everything you see in The Matrix. It's just watching these two talk. When we leave the world for the final reveal of what we see, it's a normal office, which grounds it as well. The cinematography and framing capture this. Outside of making the room look the way it does, we don't have much in the way of effects, and I appreciate the grounded approach to the science fiction. In conclusion, this is a highly effective 6-minute short that utilizes strong performances and clever dialogue to explore philosophical implications of artificial intelligence and the nature of the Turing test itself. Director Mark Tanner successfully creates a low-budget yet visually appropriate sci-fi world that puts everything into focus squarely on the tense conversation between Fonsner's Sophie and Ling Schneid's Alan. The film's strength lies in its ability to change the viewer's perception, culminating in a satisfying final reveal that redefines the stakes of the experiment. This is a short that is smart, well-executed piece of sci-fi fiction that comes highly recommended. So my rating here for the Turing test, I gave this one an 8 out of 10. And then I'll end this out here with 2 episodes of Stranger Things, so I'm all caught up and waiting for Christmas to come around for the last 4. So this one here, Chapter 3 is a turnbow trap. Will gains a unique insight into Vecna's next move, giving the crew an opportunity to set a trap. Holly explores her new surroundings. So this one here, I rather enjoyed this, like some of the other ones that I've been talking about. We get to know more about what happened to Holly. So Holly is being portrayed here by, of course, she's not going to be on this main page here, so I'm going to have to stall for time. Is portrayed by Nell Fisher, and we actually get to know that she is hanging out here with, and this is spoilers, I would go ahead and just jump away from this if you haven't caught up and you don't want anything to be revealed to you, but Henry is the one walking around with her, and he is portrayed by Jamie Campbell Bower. So we also get to kind of learn a little bit more about some of the plans for Vecna as our group, what they're trying to do, and what the military's kind of doing here and everything like that, so stuff to kind of keep in mind with that. Vecna also being portrayed by Bowers. So our group here is trying to do some different things. We also get to see a little bit more of Elle's power and how the military has a secret weapon to keep her in check. So 11 being portrayed by Millie Bobby Brown. And then we also have a kind of cool climax and a reveal at the end. There is this weird kind of circular membrane thing that has a big wall and everything. We also get to see that for whatever reason, the Demigorgons being controlled by Vecna are trying to kidnap certain children, and that's why Holly was taken, and she's being kept inside this thing. And at the end of this first episode here, a character who's been not really kind of active and stuff is alive and well and moving around, at least inside of her own head. And I actually should go ahead and say this episode here was directed by Frank Darabont, which makes sense, that great guy. And this episode was written by Caitlin Schneiderhan. And then the last episode for, this section here as we're going along is going to be Sorcerer. That's chapter 4. And for this one here, things kind of finally come to, this truly feels like a mid-season finale. We have a very kind of climactic thing where the bad guys might win a little bit here. That's Matt and Ross Duffer are the guys who, the Duffer Brothers directed this episode, and Paul Dichter was the one that wrote that. And for this one here, I think it does some really good things here. We actually see that they enlist the aid of this kid who is supposed to be the next one that is going to potentially be kidnapped, and this is because of something that Will notices. That's Noah Schnapp. And kind of just looking through here, if I can find that kid, Derek Turnbow, and that is Jake Connolly. His house was actually the Turnbow trap, is kind of how that all factors in there. That's the whole thing, is that they're trying to kidnap him because they think that if they get him away from things, that the Demigorgon won't be able to find them. Kind of running through here is that the military kind of catches onto things. There's a trap kind of being set there. I like what this one does. And then, like I said, there's a major character here at the end of this one who seems to have powers. I'm not going to reveal who that is, but it's something that finally makes this character have a little bit more oomph to do things. So I rather enjoyed both of these episodes. I think there's been so long in between that I'm not necessarily in love with it. I gave episode 3 an 8 out of 10, and I'm going to go ahead and give episode 4 an 8.5 out of 10. So, I still enjoyed it. I'm going along for the ride to kind of see where everything ends up. So that's all I have here then for mini reviews. Let me go ahead then and get you over to the trailer of my first featured review.
Cinephile 厳しい冬を耐え抜いた後、雪を割るようにして小さな花が咲く。
それがなぜうちの生徒がいじめているっていうことになるんですか？
あんたさ、あの女のこと憎ったらしいとか思わないわけ？
ぶっ殺して。
本当にやんの？マジウケるんですけど。すっごい匂いだった。あんたの母親。やめて。
春になったらミスミソを見に行こう。
春になったら。
And for my first featured review here is going to be Liverleaf. This goes by the original title of Miso. So I think probably something like that. I don't speak Japanese, so that might be just not right. But anyways, this is from 2018. It is directed by Isiku Naito. And then the screenplay was written by Miyoko Tanando. And then this is from the manga series that was done by Rensuko Ashikiri. This stars Ana Mayada, Hiro Shimitsu, and Rinka Otani. And then we also here have the likes of Rina Otsuka, Kenshin Ito, Matsuto Endo, Raiko Takayoko, Ayaka Kono, Aki Morita, Seinya Nakata, Katsuko Atomo, Irisa Sakura, Minori Terada, and Masahiro Toda. And if I mispronounce any of those names, once again, I do apologize. But this is a Japanese horror thriller film that, of course, from Japan. Currently sitting on a 6.2 on IMDb and a 3.2 on Letterboxd, with our synopsis here being: we follow Nazaki Haruka, a middle school student who transferred to a new school in a small town because of her father's work. Unfortunately, she becomes a victim of horrific bullying, but since school closes in 2 months after graduation, no one is willing to help. So this one I didn't know about until looking for winter-based horror films. It appeared on a list, and when I learned that it was from Japan, that enticed me more to check it out. I didn't realize until after the fact that this is based on a manga by Oshikiri. It took a little bit of time to find the streaming online, but making sure that I had the correct film, I started to read a little bit more of the synopsis. As I do try to come into these as blind as possible, I was quite intrigued from the things that I found. So let's start then with some featured notes, and our director is Naito. They've helmed 20 films and 2 shorts. First of their work that I've seen, he's worked in genre 10 times. Now, the top 3 that I'm missing are Lichi Hikira Club, Kaiden Piece of Darkness, and Puzzle. So there's an assistant director of Shuhei Kuhuhara. Now, they've done this for 4 movies and 1 short. First of their works that I've seen has one other one in genre with the Slip-Mouth Woman Returns. Then the writer is Tadano. She's done this for 3 features. First that I've seen, only one in genre. Ashikiri was the original writer. They have 2 adaptations of their work, both in genre. I've only ever seen this one. The other one is House of Sayuri. So then let's move down to the cast and start with Yamada. She's been in 45 motion pictures. First of the things that I've seen has 6 in genre. The top 3 that I'm missing are New Group, Suicide Forest Village, and Murder at the House of Death. And her co-star of Shimizu has been in 38 films and 3 shorts. I've seen 2 of his works. Those are the only 2 he's done in genre, with this and Sadako from 2019. Then last will be Otani. She has been in 10 works. I've seen 2. Has done 5 in horror. I've seen this in Howling Village. I haven't seen Suicide Forest Village, Oxhead Village, or Immersion. Then let's jump into the movie itself. Like the synopsis had said, we're following Haruka. We see her talking to Mitsusura Aiba, portrayed by Shimizu. I'm not fully sure if they're dating or they have feelings towards each other, but she ends up walking home alone. It is during this that we see that she is badly bullied. Now, she runs into a group, they take her shoes, they throw them in a pit that is muddy, and she ends up falling, trying to retrieve them. I'll also point out here the leader of the group is Taiko Aguro, portrayed by Otani. She's a little bit less vocal about what's going on than the others, kind of just watching. Haruka's father then comes in to talk to her teacher to see about what can be done with this bullying. What we'll learn is that the teacher was a victim herself growing up. Now, with how unruly the teens are, she shies away, not wanting to be bullied by them. She all but lets them kind of run amok. Now, we also see that Haruka's father is attacked when he's leaving the school. It is then decided that Haruka's parents will allow her to skip the rest of the school year as a way of protecting her. This annoys the group of bullies. They enlist the aid of Rumi Sayama, who is portrayed by Atsuka. Now, they force her, stating that if she doesn't help them, then they're going to take it out on her. So they're going to go back to bullying her like they used to in the past. So what ends up happening here is that she goes over to Haruka's house and tries to kind of inquire when she's going to come back to school. And Ruma even borrows a CD as kind of a way to show that she did what she did and, kind of what was told. Things then escalate here. Haruka's house is set on fire while she's away with Aiba. Now, her parents don't survive, and her sister is left in a coma due to her injuries. Haruka decides to get her own revenge. She returns to school, much to the shock of the bullies. Members of the group are racked with guilt, but peer pressure has a funny way of getting people to do things. Haruka has plans for them as she isolates the culprits. True nature is revealed as she gets her revenge. So that's really my recap of the character. I want to start is that this is a brutal little film. There are things here that I had to kind of suspend disbelief with, but that goes along with the idea that we're watching a movie. Plus being based off a manga, which is something else to consider. I'm not saying the premise is out of the realm of possibilities. It just feels a little bit like a stretch. So let's delve into more of the premise. The Nazuka family, father, mother, Haruka, and her young sister, Shoko, portrayed by Tamayori. Now, they moved to this rural area for the father's work. Haruka is an outsider, and since the locals have all been together since childhood, like in their school, they treat newcomers poorly. I can understand having transferred from a city to a country high school when I was, late elementary. You can still kind of get that feel. I didn't really necessarily notice it because I was, accepted by the time we got to high school. There were times where, newcomers would be, greeted with open arms. Other times they're not, as you definitely kind of get that cliquish behavior. What's interesting here is this almost feels like a prequel to Battle Royale in the respect that we're seeing how depraved the youths are. I know that that one is slightly futuristic, so it fits. I get the idea that because the school is located where it is, the teens truly don't experience consequences. They're coddled, and with nobody to put them straight, the violence ramps up. We're also seeing that there's at least 2, maybe 3 psychopaths in this group. I won't spoil one, but we see the gradual reveal. We also have a couple of boys, one's playing with a crossbow, and the other one has a BB gun, but he's done some modifications to it. Let's then touch on the revenge aspect. Haruka is forced into what she does. The group has taken everything from her, so she's kind of given up on having morals. I'll include the effects that she has are just brutal. I know that at one point we see a person get their septum crushed. That made me cringe. There's another one that shocked me with the levels that they go. And I mean, this starts fairly early on. I guess we're getting a combination of practical and CGI effects to bring this to life. I would prefer going more of the former, but what we get looks solid. I'll then finish out with the effects is kind of go over to what kind of helps there is that we have effective cinematography and framing. The CGI convey the cold and bleak setting with a limited cast. Much of the action takes place near the woods, which, lies in the title here is that we have the Liverleaf plant flowers in winter, offering a hopeful contrast to the events. The film is slightly overlong. The soundtrack is fitting. I'd say, though, this is still just well made across the board. Now, before moving away from this completely, I did want to finish out with discussing the themes. Going along with the bullying and revenge, this is showing the transformation or the metamorphosis of Haruka. You can see that with the other characters as well as they do unspeakable things. It is that escalation of violence. There's also a commentary here on the nihilism of humanity. There is the inescapable brutality, and our leads are all morally ambiguous. We also have a lack of authority to kind of help people be held accountable, especially these teens. There's a desire to escape that seems unattainable. All that's left then to be the acting performances. I do think the Yamada is an interesting one here. She shows emotions before everything is taken from her. She then goes in a very stoic nature as she gets her revenge. It's terrifyingly cold. Shimitsu is interesting as her boyfriend. What I like there is that we see a different level of depravity as he's rejected in a sense. Atani and her crew are good. What is interesting there is that it's softened through the backstory with Haruka. And then we also here have Otsuka has an interesting arc. The acting is good across the board. So there's a little bit of trivia. I think there's only one piece that I wanted to kind of run through here. This is adapted from the manga series Miso Misao, which was created and written by the author Rensuke. So yeah, definitely not a whole lot there. But in conclusion, this is a fiercely bleak and brutal film that excels as a chilling exploration of bullying, revenge, and nihilistic cruelty of youth when unchecked by authority. Though requiring some suspension of disbelief due to the manga origins, the film delivers on its promise of escalating violence and shocking moments, supported by a solid acting from Yamada and the supporting cast. The effective cinematography beautifully captures the cold, isolating environment, contrasting it with the hopeful symbolism of the Liverleaf flower. While slightly extended in runtime, the overall production quality is high, making a compelling, albeit difficult watch for fans of Japanese horror and extreme psychological thrillers. So my rating here for Liverleaf after this first watch, I gave this one a 7.5 out of 10. I rather enjoyed some of the things that it was doing. I'm not going to do a spoiler section. There's not anything I necessarily kind of delve into there outside of just giving more of, some reveals. So what I'll go ahead and do is then get you over to the trailer of my second featured review.
What am I going to get to meet this guy?
Didn't work out with Ryan, but there's this new guy I'm talking to.
I love you.
I know this might seem forward, but if you'd care to join me for a home-cooked meal.
Do I look like me?
This guy is way too articulate. Like, serial killer articulate. There's something about him. It's like he's from the 1940s or something. He calls me darling.
Love you more than you'll ever know. He has his father's eyes.
Hal is in trouble. She was supposed to meet a guy and she never came home.
And for my second featured review here, I have Match. This is from 2025. This is a 2B1. I don't know if it's an original or if it was just picked up by them, but I digress. But this is directed by Danishka Esterhazy. This was written between Al and John Kaplan, stars Umberly Gonzalez, Shanae Jimenez, and Diane Simpson, while also having here Jacques Andreessi, I think everybody say that one. We have Luke Volker, Nikita Faber, Dean Goldblum, Peter Butler, Alex McGregor, Cassiel Itak Winnick, Brett Williams, Michael Everson, Troyden Berg, Nicole Nell, Caitlin Barnard, Taylor Grief, and Caitlin Drury. So this is a horror film that is from South Africa, actually. Currently sitting on a 5.3 on IMDb and a 2.6 on Letterboxd, where our synopsis being, after Paula is matched with a handsome online suitor, she arrives for her first date to discover a house full of dark and terrifying secrets. So Paula, portrayed by Gonzalez, and this is a film that I had heard about when it garnered buzz on social media. A buddy of mine of Mike pointed out the similarities to a film that I saw at Nightmares Film Festival that intrigued me more to see this. So this was a 2025 horror release. There wasn't anything coming to the theater, so I decided to go ahead and check this out on Tubi. And then let's go ahead and jump into some featured notes. I'll start with our director here, Esther Hazy. She's done this role for 17 films and 7 shorts. I've seen 2. Not horror. She did a creepy sci-fi one in Level 16. She's done 3 in genre with the Banana Splits movie, Slumber Party Massacre remake, and Killer Body Count. So we have 2 writers here, the Kaplans. First is Al. He has written 4 films, all in genre. I've seen Lowlives and this. I have not seen Zombievers or The Drone. So I'm assuming brother of John also wrote Zombievers. He has 2 credits, both in genre, and I've only ever seen this one. So then, move to our cast. I'll start with Gonzalez. I've seen her in 2 films. She has been in 18 and 3 shorts. Has been in 4 horror films. I've seen Tarot and this. I have not seen Witches in the Woods or Killer High. So her co-star of Jimenez has been in 2 features. First that I've seen, only one she's done in horror. Then last I'll look at Simpson. She's been in 4 works. First that I've seen, only one that she has done in genre as well. All right, let's jump into this one here, and we're following Paula as she navigates the dating world through phone apps. Now, she goes on various dates. They aren't what she's necessarily looking for, though. Things all change when she matches with Henry, portrayed by Volker. She finds him to be good-looking and attracted to the fact that he's also into films of the past. I think they're mostly kind of from like the 1940s. I think that's kind of like the film noir, kind of troubled loved ones. She had this instilled from her father, portrayed by Peter Butler. He is nervous, so he's expecting to pass away from an upcoming procedure, but he's just getting a stent put into his heart. I get why he would be fearful, but his daughters, which are Paula and Maria, portrayed by Jimenez, do what they can to ease his fears. So as the night approaches for the date, Maria is skeptical, even more so that her plan to come over to his house for dinner, and he's going to cook her a meal. Now, she rationalizes that he's afraid of COVID and other viruses due to him having a weakened immune system. They do have a video chat that gets cut very short, but it's enough to show her that he does match his pictures. Paul then goes to the house, rings the doorbell. It takes some time for somebody to come, and it turns out to be Henry's mother of Lucille, portrayed by Simpson. She states that Henry had an appointment, and he's on his way home. Warning bells start to go off for Paula, but she agrees to come inside. They share a glass of wine, they chat a little bit. It is awkward. Paula starts to rapidly text Henry, only to learn the truth. Something was in the wine, and she's taken to a room. It is from here the truth of who Henry is, and just the beginning of the nightmare, and what is planned for her. So that's what my recap and introduction of the characters. What I want to start is that I could connect this with this one to an extent. I did find my wife on a dating app, shout out to Jamie. They also led me to going on some bad dates. That helps me to connect with a situation like this, even though none were nearly as bad or scary as this one. Part of this could be that I'm a male, but I'll digress on that. The concept isn't necessarily new, but I like what we're doing with it. Now that I set up, let's look at our lead character of Paula. Blindsided by Henry's looks and shared movie taste, she ignores red flags and agrees to dinner at his house. Though Lucille answering the door should have been another one to leave, politeness and the desire for success keep her in the situation. Setup I do appreciate. Gonzalez is also attractive, and her performance suited the role very well. And I mean, the poster with her looking as stressed out as she does, that's definitely good. So shifting from here, I did want to bring up her sister. Maria knows there's something bad could happen. Since she isn't entranced by Henry, she keeps pointing out these issues. This does get ignored by Paula. I do like that she springs into action when she knows something is wrong. It's a good setup to show how much they both love their father. Paula wouldn't forget that he has a surgery coming up. It makes sense why the ruse doesn't work to put off everybody on this trail, but Jimenez's performance fits what was needed as well. Where I'll then go is partially going to take me into filmmaking as well. I love that we get this older, large house. It gives me vibes of the old dark house subgenre from the past, which would kind of fit Paola's taste in movies. It's set up like a maze, not easy to get out. I believe the elevator is the only way to the higher floors, with some of the things that have been done to prevent just going up and down without it. The cinematography and framing help to capture that claustrophobic feel. Then to make matters worse, we see the truth of who Henry is and how his mother factors into all this. This all worked to build a good atmosphere. I'll then finish off with some of the other aspects. The effects here are good. First look at Henry. We get some solid practical effects with the attacks and kill scenes. There's a few that were quite brutal that made me cringe, so credit there. I believe the CGI was used here as well. I don't recall it necessarily standing out too much. I believe they actually used it the way you should, where you're using it just to enhance. Other than that, I do think that this does well with the sound design and the music fit for what was needed. So all that's left then to be the acting performances. Gonzalez and Jimenez deserve praise once again. Simpson's portrayal of this mother is great. Her initial apparent niceness gradually reveals her depravity. I would also give credit here to Andrianzi. If I'm mispronouncing that, I do apologize, but he's effective as the real Henry, bringing good size to the role. Volker's reveal works, though one aspect was guessable without a major impact. Butler and the rest of the cast, including Faber, provide necessary support. So there isn't any trivia that I found on the IMDb page, so in conclusion, this offers a compelling, if familiar, horror premise central on the perils of dating apps. The film effectively uses claustrophobic old dark house setting and strong atmospheric elements to build tension, supported by solid practical effects and sound design. Gonzalez is convincing as the lead Paola, whose vulnerability is contrasted by Jimenez's proactive sister, Maria. Simpson's performance as the unnerving mother, Lucille, is a highlight. While one twist might be predictable, the film delivers a brutal and engaging nightmare, making it a worthwhile watch for horror fans looking for a tense cat and mouse thriller. So my rating here for Match, I enjoyed what I had here, and I give this one a 7 out of 10. And like I said, I would recommend giving it a watch on Tubi. So I'm not going to do a spoiler section. There's not anything I necessarily need to do there, so let me go ahead and get you over then to one last break before I close out the show.
Pod Nation TV has you beamed up with Out of This World award-winning podcast, found exclusively on Pod Nation TV. Download Pod Nation TV for Roku and Fire TV. Pod Nation TV, Out of This World.
And welcome back. So if you'd like to send me any sort of feedback, anything you want read on the show, or any screener requests, anything like that, you can send those to journeywithacinephile@gmail.com. If you'd like to read any of my written reviews or see any of the old past podcast episodes, all of that is being stored over at Journey with a Cinephile. That is my blog, and that's going to be horrorreview.webnode.com. If you'd like to follow me and become friends on Facebook, it's going to be David Garrett Jr. is my name over on there. There's going to be a link in the show notes. And then if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, it's going to be Buckeye from Mish. And then if you'd like to follow my Letterboxd page where I have all of my reviews, whether that is going to be horror or non-horror, that's going to be David OSU is my name on that. Instagram and Threads, I'm David OSU87. Over on my personal Instagram page, you might see some of my family stuff every now and then whenever I remember to post something. My wife is much better at it than I am. But then if you'd like to follow the Journey with a Cinephile Instagram, that's going to be Journey with a Cinephile, all one word. And then also direct you, if you'd like, to the Discord channel. That's going to be the Nightclub Discord, but I have a page over there. And there's also some other great pages of other shows and them kind of messing around and everything like that. Do highly recommend if you want to go ahead and check that out. And then the last thing I'll actually say here, if you would like to listen to the show a day early, this is always going to be streaming over there on the Pod Nation TV app. So I will have, once again, a link in the show notes for that if that is something that you're interested in. So yeah, there's some great stuff here. There's some great shows on some of these other networks and stuff. I highly recommend checking them out. And for my next episode is going to be 319, and the two featured reviews over there, I'm not sure what the 2025 release is going to be as of yet. I know there's a few handful of ones that I've been kind of kicking the tires on and everything like that, but I'm going to be pairing this up with Chill Factor. Not sure where I can find that one to watch as of yet. I know I looked it up a few months ago when I was, compiling what I was going to do there. And then The Fear is going to be my Voyage to the Fives rewatches. I believe is also from 1995. I'll have more new 2025 releases as well as do some more rewatches in there and everything like that. So I don't think there's anything I need to do for this outro except say, that wraps up this episode of Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of horror cinema. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow along for more deep dives into the macabre. Until next time, keep watching horror, and remember, fear is just a frame away.
It had been a wonderful evening, and what I needed now to give it the perfect ending